What's up, savages? This is Coach Chip, and you're watching Toe to Toe TV. Let's get right into it. Bill Haney has to be the biggest troll on the internet next to 50 Cent. Bill Haney is the closest thing. He's the modern day Don King. That's what we're talking about today in this video. Bill Haney gets into a back and forth with Brian Norman Sr. on the Boxing Voice. Shout out to Ness on the Boxing Voice. And was talking about fighting Brian Norman Jr. With Devin Haney fighting Brian Norman Jr. And he's making these memes like Devin Haney is the Debo of the division, this, that, and the third. Listen, there's no discredit to Bill Haney and Devin Haney, because Devin Haney is a hell of a boxer. He's a hell of an athlete. But Devin Haney has not been in a kind of a dogfight or a threat, under that type of threat that Brian Norman Jr. would pose to him. Devin Haney had a competitive fight with Lomachenko. Vasily Lomachenko started his career at 125 and a half pounds. And we all know Devin Haney is huge. He's a welterweight. Fighting at 140, fighting at 145, he's a big kid. He's a big young man. Brian Norman Jr. is knocking the memory out of fighters. He knocked the memory out of Jin Sasaki in Japan last week. He knocked his memory out. That man said he don't even remember fighting, training, anything. Devin Haney has not been under that type of threat. He had a competitive fight with a smaller Lomachenko. He had a competitive fight and got rocked by a smaller Linares. He got dropped competitively in a competitive fight with Ryan Garcia. You know, he was caught on PEDs and everything, that and enhancing performance drugs. But Ryan Garcia is not Brian Norman Jr. And on top, he was calling out Richard Hitchens. He better stay there. That would be a competitive fight. Richard is 140. Devin is bigger than him, and that's the MO that they use. You know, you respect it. That's a strategy. But Brian Norman Jr., in my opinion, they're knocking on the wrong door. You are barking up the wrong tree, because Devin Haney has made a career with fighting smaller people. Right when he got in there with somebody the same size, you know, even though Ryan was, I would give credit to that. Ryan was on some sort of drugs, you know, but he was able to take. Oh, and Devin ran from Ramirez. He ran from Ramirez. He outpointed him. He boxed him and everything, but he ran. Brian Norman Jr., there is nowhere to run. There are some people where the Joe Louis old statement, you can run, but you can't hide. And all of that holding and running around and this, that, and the third, I don't know if Bill Haney he's so pro Devin Haney, and I don't know if he realized his son's stock has dropped. And he was saying in the argument with Brian Norman Sr. that, you know, he was going to help him out. And Brian Norman was like, no, bro, you know what I mean? You're not helping me out. You're not giving me anything, because Brian Norman Jr.'s stock is rising. His stock is rising. He is being talked about. They are saying that his last fight with Jin Sasaki could possibly be the knockout of the year. So I I don't know if Bill Haney gets it. You know, I think he's trolling. I think there's no way that Devin Haney is going to fight Brian Norman Jr. You know, he got his hands full with Hitchens. He got his hands full there because Hitchens got skills. He got some pop. He got a defense. He got a good jab, counters. So that's a very competitive fight. And since Hitchens been in traffic, you know what I mean, and Devin has taken a long time off. I would say too that I never seen him perform like he did with Ramirez. So you know getting the ring rust off from his long layoff and stuff like that. I get that part. I give him that. But Brian Norman, he hasn't taken any. He hasn't had a long layoff. He has had impressive wins by knockout. I think his knockout percentage is like in the 70, 80 percentile against welterweights. So they're definitely knocking on the wrong door. You know what I mean? You're knocking on, you asking the Candyman, the Boogeyman, the Grim Reaper, as far as punching power goes, stepping in that ring with that young man. They ain't playing. His daddy ain't playing. He ain't playing. So I don't think that, because they were saying Bill Haney was talking so much trash, and he's good for boxing and entertainment, building up the fights and things like that. But Brian Norman was like, yo, this can be, Senior was like, yo, this can be the next fight. So with the ring rust that Devin Haney had to shake off, plus the competitive fights that he had with smaller fighters, that is a recipe for a disaster for the Haney clan. You haven't been in the ring with anybody with that type of power. You have ring rust going on, probably PTSD from the left hooks that you took from Ryan Garcia. You know, a fighter goes through that. That's a real thing. And to get in there with, your second fight, get in there with a person throwing them Scud missiles. Brian Norman Jr. has Scud missiles, and them things is coming. You hear me? That is not good. He need a lot of soft touches to get his groove back. And I don't think that Brian Norman Jr. is a good fighter for Devin Haney at all. Period. Bill Haney do a lot of talking for his son and talked him into a whooping. Cause boy, I just don't think Devin Haney is ready for that type of pressure. Cause them punches are coming hard all night long, and Devin Haney doesn't have the pocket presence, the defense. Devin Haney's dependent on his hands and his feet to get him out of trouble. Devin Haney really don't have head movement like that. Not for me. You know what I mean? He's not consistent with his head movement. So any type of punch that Brian Norman throws is going to be damaging from the beginning of the fight until the end. So that's not something he needs to see what he does with Hitchens, and then work his way up. If he can't make 140 anymore, if he's considering 147 now that Boots is gone, that they need to call out some more people, because Brian Norman Jr. ain't the one. That he is not the one. Not thinking of, and this is not a knock on Devin, but this is just facts of him dealing with and how he looked with smaller fighters. Those were a competitive fight. He didn't knock anybody out. He didn't. Hitchens dropped Campbell. He made Cambosis quit with a body shot. Devin boxed him to death, but Hitchens got in there and stopped that man. Devin didn't do that. So you need that mark of where they are and how they can compete with this new talent that's knocking on the door, and this torch being passed, and new faces being in certain weight classes. They need to start with Hitchens, and Hitchens ain't no cakewalk either. So way before but that's a more of a reality than Brian the Scud missile thrower Norman Jr. So that's my take. This Coach Chip. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. I'm out.